We're attacking on land, in the air, day and night. We never let them rest, and all the while we grow stronger.
These roads intersect, on each one I reflect. These lines write my story.
Welcome everyone, I'm One True Brick, coming to you with another LEGO Exo-Force review. This is set number 7703, the Fire Vulture. It was released in 2006 for about $15, and it had 177 pieces. Now for reference, nowadays on Bricklink or eBay, for a used model that's complete, you're going to be looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 to $35. This is the most expensive resale model of the line for the $15 sets. So keep that in mind if you are looking to get it after I'm done with the review. So last week, when we looked at the Stealth Hunter, we saw a very anime-style, almost Gundam-like design in the build. Conversely, the robot battle machines have a very different aesthetic, very industrial, and they tend to keep towards the darker color schemes, at least for this year. So you'll see colors like dark blue, black, and occasionally you see bits of silver and light sand blue. So it's got this darker feel to it to kind of let you know that these are the bad guys. So this set probably had the strangest color scheme of this wave. It's odd mainly because it includes that it starts out with the black, the dark gray, and the blues, which works well enough. But then in addition to that, you can see it also has some tan, some dark tan, and even bits of yellow. Now, I think if they did this in a more muted way, it would work better, but I would honestly say it kind of pulls away from the color scheme of the design, and it's probably the weakest of this wave of sets. More notably, this is the only set that doesn't have a weapon recolor piece. So for each of the sets of this wave, there is a Bionicle or Knight's Kingdom style part that's been recolored that's exclusive to this design. This is the only one that does not include that. These hooks are a light gray color, and so they were still included in previous Technic sets in the past. Probably the most notable aspect of this build is this giant turbine that it's got on the back, kind of indicating that this vehicle is able to fly. So as you can see, you have the ability to rotate it. It specifically uses a Technic pin that is in the loose configuration so that you can spin it quite easily. You also have the ability to kind of rotate it up if you wanted to, I don't know, make it look kind of like a helicopter. But in order to do that, they have a unique design in the back where the handle that activates the function for the set also holds this up. So that is a pretty cool way of adding something to the model to make it more unique, because quite honestly, this is probably the least interesting of them otherwise. So obviously I've already talked about this a little bit. This claw doesn't really add a whole lot to the set. It's a kind of weak secondary weapon, but the set kind of makes up for it with having this nice looking primary weapon, which is a Flamethrower. Now, something to note, the way that this set is designed in the instructions, it specifically tells you to have the piece for the Flamethrower shoulder be positioned like this. Now, if you'll notice, when you try to bend it, it doesn't quite cooperate the way you'd expect it to, like an actual arm would, going up and down. So I personally think, as long as you don't mind modifying a set slightly, that I would consider rotating that and reattaching it so that it has a little bit more flexibility the way that you'd kind of want it to be able to move. And then, of course, you get the standard articulation that you'd get in these $15 sets, which is bendable joints in the shoulder, the elbow, the hips, the knees, and the ankles. You also get an additional point of articulation with this hand so that you can kind of curl it towards itself if you'd like. These two claws are attached together so they don't move separately, although if you wanted to, you could actually remove this Technic piece between and have them move separately. And of course, you also get the opposability of this. So it's probably the most posable of these sets. In addition to that, something to note is that most of the sets for this wave, and honestly it's a theme amongst most Exo-Force sets, is that they are rather fragile. This model is a lot more sturdy than most of the other ones, which is odd because it actually probably has the most gappy build. If you look right here, there's a nice hole that you can just kind of see into the cockpit, and then also from below there is a lot of gappiness as well. So despite that, it still manages to be very sturdy. There aren't really any pieces that are easy to knock off. It's potentially possible to kind of knock this off from the side, but as long as you have it secure and folded back, it's actually pretty easy to keep it there. These are also pretty sturdy because they're attached by axle holes, and so the whole set is really durable in comparison to the rest of them, so I would call that a definite pro. So obviously the primary function of these line of sets, if you've already seen my Stealth Hunter review, is its ability to light up. So I'm going to really quick show you guys what it looks like with the lights off. Now that we're in the dark, I'm going to reach around and push on. There's a lever in the back, or a lever, or a lever, where you can push down and it will activate the function, lighting up the brick inside, the tube, and then also a sort of laser sight for the flamethrower. Now, one of the biggest issues that I've seen with these, and I talked about this in my last review as well, is that the power brick, the light up brick, quite often has this issue with dying. Now, there's a very relatively straightforward fix for this. You can buy replacement batteries for them. They are CR927 3-volt lithium batteries. You can get them for a pack of about 15 for around $10 off the internet, and I'm going to be posting a video pretty soon on how to properly replace the battery. It just requires a flathead screwdriver and those aforementioned replacement batteries. So let's take a look at the minifigure. So the robots had a very interesting design to them. They were pretty similar to a standard minifigure, except for instead of the normal head articulation, this torso and head is all one piece. And for whatever reason, they decided in this set not to have an axle in the head, but there is an option to add a red or black axle through the eyepiece that kind of gives it a look like it has eyes, but for whatever reason, LEGO decided not to have eyes on this one. You also get shoulder articulation, hand articulation. Sorry, it's a little bit stiff. Some hand articulation. Man, that is really stiff. Promise it moves. And then these legs. Now, probably the most interesting part of these minifigures' design is that the legs have 2 studs worth of space instead of 1. So keep that in mind if you're planning on using this for a mock or something, that you will have to create a slightly larger space for these guys. They also don't sit down quite the same way that you normally would. They don't have studs on the back of the legs, and so being able to have them sit down requires a little bit more finicky to get it to work. Probably some snot techniques getting them to be able to plug into something in front of them. There are some sets that Exo-Force has made where this is possible. Another thing to note, as I get this guy back in here, this is the only set to include a dual silver and blue injected Devastator robot. So most of them are just plain silver. They do also make some red and green ones, but this is the only set that includes the blue one. So if you have a collectability kind of thing going on, keep in mind this is the only way to get that particular minifigure. Finally, the last thing that, once again, is one of the biggest appeals to these sets is the amount of combo models and alternate models that you can make with them. So the most notable one for this set, by the way, instruction manual, has not held up that well, but honestly, it's not the instruction manual's fault. I have not taken particularly good care of it, but hey, still there. On the very last page of this, you can see there is this model right here, which is called the Raging Storm, which can be built by combining this set with the Thunder Fury. So keep that in mind if you like having alternate models. In addition to that, there is another model that I showed last week called the Robot Reaper 1.0 that you can build by combining it with the Stealth Hunter, and there's also alternative models, and I believe actually even one more combo model that you can make with the Stealth Hunter that you can find at the wiki down in the description below. So take a look at that if you are interested in that. So now with the review out of the way, one of the things I like to do when looking at these sets is to look at their story prevalence. So these robot battle machines are very different from the human battle machines, and that is because they were designed by the humans a long time ago, prior to the robot rebellion. So originally, humans built robots and built these machines for them, not intended for combat. So things like this flamethrower right here was replaced by a drill, and it wasn't necessarily built to fly, but instead used for mining purposes. And then when the robots rebelled, they were forced into the bottom of the Sentai Mountain, which is the location where all of the story takes place. And while they were down there, they kind of evolved and rebuilt their machines so that they could fight back against the humans. And so when they did that, they added these things like flamethrowers and propellers in order to give them an edge in combat. It was originally built for mining purposes, and it made up the majority of the robot Skyforce. So aside from the Sonic Phantom, which was kind of a rarity to see in combat, these guys were the ones that often were fighting against the Stealth Hunter and other air-related human battle machines. It was also the longest use battle machine by far, and even saw some use into the Golden City. Even saw some use into the Golden City era of the Exo-Force campaign. It is the only robot battle machine, I found this interesting actually, only robot battle machine to feature a weapon that wasn't a laser or a blade. So even though it does have claws and lasers up here, the flamethrower is the only aspect of it that is featured that isn't one of those two things, and no other robot battle machine or human battle machine, as far as I'm aware, has a weapon that kind of features an alternative power source. So kind of give it a little bit of a different kind of edge in combat, throw a curveball at the human battle machines. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this review. If you are more curious about this set or the story that it's involved in, once again, you can check the description for a link to the wiki. And I will see you guys in next week's review when I will be looking at the Grand Titan. Thanks. Bye! With this cannon, it is one of the first times LEGO kind of uses this building technique that was previously kind of considered to be illegal, and that is